Boot camps, boot camps, boot camps, boot camps. You probably heard of boot camps by now. Boot camps have been a thing since 2013, and we'll talk about what they are. But this video, there's only really one message. Be very, very careful about signing up for a boot camp, any kind, particularly if you're going to be spending money. If you have someone you love, or if you're considering a boot camp, I strongly encourage you to watch this video to the end. I'm going to share several stories about people who have been to boot camps and unsolicited stories about them and why you might consider them and what they involve and whether they're the right thing for you. The answer is almost always no, that it's going to be a bad idea and you're going to lose money and you're going to have everything to show for it. And that's my opinion. Other people probably have had experiences. Some of you maybe had really great experiences. Please put those in the comments below or whatever, and make sure that we hear your story as well so we can add it to the list. It's usually better to get to do a project-based learning approach that you've set up for yourself that you can then use to demonstrate that you know how to learn and teach and teach yourself and grow, and then demonstrate your commitment and ability to stay on top of things than it is to go pay the money, get a piece of paper, and leave without actually being able to show anything for it, which has been fundamentally my experience and hearing about people who do boot camps. Capture the flag. Capture the flag is not a boot camp. Okay, so we'll talk about CTF. That's a great question. We'll ask that a separate time. So let's talk about boot camps really quickly. I'm going to share some stories right away. The first story I have is probably the most disturbing. I was at a pub. I was actually, if you know my IRL streams, it's my favorite pub. It's the pub where I met Jack and everything. And I was actually, I remember the day I was standing right outside the pub. This was when I ran SkillStack, which was a brick and mortar sort of mentoring school learning community across the street, which if you want to see, I regularly bike there, or have biked there. You can go see there's videos of that. And while I was outside, a guy, the brother of another guy who actually was sad, he passed away because of a degenerative disease. And we were talking about that and many things, just shooting the breeze. And he actually completed a boot camp, and I said, "Oh my gosh, please let me know." This was 2013 when boot camps were all the rage. And he said, this is almost a direct quote. He said, I'm trying to get it right. He said, "Well, I'm $9,000 lighter and I still don't have a job." That was what he said. And if you knew about this guy's situation, which was already economically very hard, right? He had to really scrape up that money in order to do that boot camp. And it just ripped me up inside. I felt kind of bad for asking. And I wanted to help him. I said, "Well, you can come over and just hang with me." I used to do that all the time. I would give away like free time skill stack for people that I took pity on, which is really I'm a really horrible business person, right? Because I used to give everything away for free. Oh, I don't know, kind of like these videos. And so, yeah, I had him come over, and he kept working on different things, and eventually he did get a job and was able to start doing things. But he didn't have, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to say what one, it wasn't about me bragging about being a nice person. Thank you very much. That was not why I said it. But, I just remember being like totally this, like my heart being just like wrenched. And around that same time, by the way, it's important that you understand that I started SkillStack with retirement money because nobody was teaching the base skills as I saw them that they were needed on the job, and we were having a really hard time getting a hold of anybody to hire them in 2013 in particular. And there's other videos about that. But then also at the same time, people were also not teaching the right thing. There's these all this stuff going down in educational, AP Computer Science. If you could even find it, was no good. And I was like, okay, we need to start SkillStack. So I did. I started SkillStack and said, okay, I'm going to try very, awkwardly, because I had never officially taught anything. This stuff, and it just occurred to me that the best way to learn it would be to actually use the real tools. And I was committed from the very beginning to have project-based learning that was based on real things. And I did a whole video about that, so make sure you watch that. And but a lot of that came in as a backlash to the boot camp thing. Now, full disclosure, I was actually solicited by a university locally to run their boot camp program. So let me talk to you a little bit about the history of boot camps really quickly, so you can understand where they're coming from. And I was joking earlier in the first take of this video about the capitalism meets education. It's that's a great thing, right? Well, that's boot camps, right? Boot camps and look, I am making money from these YouTube videos, so to a certain degree, I am not clean either, right? I'm not necessarily doing them for that. But if you say how much money you make from doing these videos, you'd know that. But that's why I have a real job. So the boot camp thing is exactly that. It's money meets education, in a kind of an ugly way. It's completely unregulated, and this is the part where I'm going to get kind of chatty, right? Because this does kind of get into a conversational area that I have a lot of opinions on. So, and there's many others who've talked about this. Ted Dintersmith comes to mind, who's talked about how enterprises and understand education better than some of the formal academic institutions. And I don't want to go down that entirely amazing fun rabbit hole right now, but it really is a debate about, on the one hand, you have to understand this dynamic in order to understand where boot camps came from and why universities are adopting boot camps today, which is really weird to say, but it's true. So on the one hand, you have accredited universities who have to submit their curriculum upwards to a year in advance to a particular accreditation to an accreditation organization, and that means that their syllabus and everything in their course has to be approved in advance. There is no way that any institution on the planet dedicated to learning can follow that and keep up with what's required to learn, and that includes me. The reason that I do these videos the way I do, and these little tiny pieces, and I have skills like .io out there now, is because at any moment I might have to change how I teach this or how I present it. In fact, I just did. One specific example of that is like introducing the use of VS Code before the terminal, and I have been able to adapt and change, and I was always able to do that at SkillStack, which drove certain people crazy. By the way, I had a professor of education who pulled their kid out of SkillStack because I was changing the curriculum way too fast. I was changing it, as fast as I wanted to. And so that's the other side. The boot camp, or the private industry, I guess, is willing and able to change things as fast as they want, and they do. They can change things really great. And I did another video that recently talks about this, and I don't remember if I linked to the video. I think I did. If I did, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. You can skip over this, but then, fast forward to something like 2018, 2019, and organizations like Trinity came about, which provide boot camp type learning to projects to the universities, so the university can do their thing. And that's when you start to see that there's kind of a middle ground there, and that's what becomes attractive. But the truth of the matter is that number one, when you get into a boot camp, you're like really intensely focused, and that has positive and negative effects. If you're going to yoga training, like I did a month and a half, this is 30 days of yoga training, really intensive yoga training, and I became, certified yoga instructor and all of that. And it was amazing. It was amazing. I got to have the camaraderie of all the people there. I got to really get to know them. I got to eat, drink, and sleep, the yoga and the poses. Everything I did was dedicated to it. And I felt like I got a lot out of that. And for something like yoga training, I'm quite certain that I would not have the same experience had I been doing the weekend thing, right? Where we all drive there for the weekend, try to forget what we did during the week and focus on something. When you're talking about something as immersive and important as yoga, which has multiple facets to it, then yes, I think immersion therapy, if that's even a thing, and education, immersive education, and learning, I think it's phenomenal. It's fantastic, and I think for that kind of thing, I could see that being true for. So there's another thing there. By the way, I want to draw a distinction. You walked in on a yoga talk. Let's go. So we're actually recording a video about the bad or the dangers of boot camps right now. So just so you know, you're being recorded. I should probably put that in the chat. So yoga, art, writers retreat. There's something about a creative, immersive experience that is very good, and it promotes learning, and it promotes creativity, it promotes, I think, output. But I don't personally believe that that is as effective when you're trying to learn something for the first time and it's a tech thing. That's just my take on it. Now, to be fair, there are things like what used to be called hackerspace. I forget the name of it, but there is a New York. There's there. I forget the name of it. It used to be called hackerspace, but in New York they have what's essentially a writers retreat for programmers, and you have to already know how to program. And I think there's an important reason that they make that distinction. By the way, to be fair, I really want to do this. If I was ever to get the resources, I would buy a plot of land and I would regularly have retreats, really intensive coding learning retreats. And I might be tempted to try the whole boot camp idea, but I'm more interested in the idea of these retreats, these hacker retreats, or these coding retreats, where you already come with a certain set of skills, right? You've already learned it. You could have a beginner or a pro, and you come together and you help each other, and so you get the sociability of it, and you get that association. And I think if there's one positive benefit of a boot camp, that's it. It's the chance to build a professional learning network, starting with the group. I mean, I maintain relationships with those people from the yoga thing I still follow them on Instagram, right? Those initial relationships I think are extremely valuable. And when I think about people who have had regular experience teaching web boot camps, like I'm going to say specifically Learn with Leon, I think if there's anybody that you would want to ask about how well and good a boot camp can be, it would be something like the boot camps that Learn with Leon has put on. Learn with Leon has successfully helped many people get jobs very quickly by using the boot camp approach. And I would bet that Leon would agree that the one of the primary attractions of the boot camp is this idea of community learning and support, and the inertia that comes from all of the people helping each other out. And I've experienced that, but it wasn't necessarily for coding or this kind of thing. And to be fair, I actually did try to replace the first version of SkillStack Online after the COVID thing. I tried to do this. I tried to create this kind of community feel and have a really intense session, and everybody was dedicated, 7 to 8 hours a day during the summer, during 2 months, and it never worked. After the first 2 weeks, everybody was gone because they didn't have the time. There wasn't that same dynamic, and it was just I don't know. We'd have to get to land somewhere. But this just did not. It just did not happen. It just did not happen. As much as I try to promote community in the Discord and in Twitch and everything, and have a good time, there's just something magical about being in person. So that is a lot of personal experiences and story, and hopefully you can fast forward through this to say that the positive aspect of boot camps is the sociability, the connections you make, and the motivation you feel by being together in a group. But at the same time, that can also be a serious negative. I have seen people on the job who have done nothing, but they felt like they did a lot because they all sat in a room together and they were all, they felt like they were synergizing, and they were, piggybacking off each other's ideas, and they were eating donuts, so they had a sugar and a coffee high going on, and they didn't do anything, but they felt really good about it because they had so many people around, right? How many people have gone to we're gonna go have a pub, thing, and I talked about a manager who used to have the donut meeting on Friday, where they would just sit us all in a room and we would eat donuts, and there was no agenda, and we knew there was no agenda, and there was nothing on the line. There was no target to achieve. It was completely ad hoc and fun. And that particular manager, I leveraged that dynamic to produce some pretty amazing new ideas about what should be done and how to fix problems. But it wasn't that we had a goal and we got all in the room together, because honestly, most of the time, if you want to be productive, you need to remove distraction. My wife recently has become known as somebody who has a lot of people around, and she leaves her door open at work. I'm going to throw her under the bus a little bit here. And she is, there's another video about focus. So we talk about that entirely. And that's what I'm saying. The statement here is that group dynamic can work against you sometimes. So just be careful. That comes from a boot camp. And so my wife, she had to get some stuff done. And so she closed the door and everybody was worried. They were all like, is there something wrong with Doris? Is Doris angry? And to a certain degree, they might have been panicked, and I'm paraphrasing, but she mentioned that a lot of people came up to her and like, is everything okay? And then because she shut her door, because that idea of like being available and is a powerful thing, but it can also work against you. So make sure you don't lose your focus by that, and you don't feel like you're learning when you're actually not. You're having a really good time, but there's really no moment during that you get to test whether you actually learned something or not. So. Okay, so the biggest positive of boot camps is the social aspect of it and being together. But there are so many negatives, and pretty much everything else is a negative. So the first negative is cost. It's extremely. You can ask me the off-topic questions later after this video, okay? So the first one is cost. These things are ridiculously expensive, like $9,000 for an 8-week boot camp, okay? I mean, this is insane. If they charged you that much money for a university education, you'd be paying, which they are slowly creeping up to, you'd be paying an amazing amount. The second thing is that they're not proven, right? The third thing is they're completely unregulated. So, and I mean unregulated. And my goodness, you should have seen all the news articles. In 2013, there were news articles about, boot camps are reforming education across the world. Everyone was all, how awesome they are. And then there were all of the news articles about how much they had failed everyone. I mean, one of them that I remember, one article was there was this couple in California who started a boot camp, and they had people sleeping on their couch, and the woman. This is my memory of the article. I'm not trying to be chauvinist here. The woman would bring out cookies and constantly bring in food and everything, but they didn't learn anything, and they took all their money, and then these people left, and they started complaining to the Better Business Bureau, and they said, we're not getting any skills here, but they took all my money. And so it was, it became this is such a California, Silicon Valley sort of thing, by the way, right? It's like, we're disrupting education and blah, 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 come learn coding on our couch, and then they take the money and run. And it was happening. A lot of people were doing this. It was completely unregulated. So you've got overly regulated accreditation for a university that can't keep up, and to the completely unregulated, sleep on my couch and I'll teach you to code, where's your money, people. And someplace in the middle in there is probably something, but the best solution is just avoid it all, and not have to deal with it. And then the other story, I think I already told the story, but I'll just tell it quickly. So I was actually asked. I was asked by two different organizations. Tech Talent South actually asked me to run their educational curriculum, and I asked them point blank. I said, "Can I publish the stuff that I do as well? Can I keep it?" And they said, "No, it will become our intellectual property." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to do it then." So where's the lesson in here? The lesson in here, yeah, the whole question about gold diggers, right? The lesson here is that a lot of times when you go to a boot camp, Learn with Leon's boot camp was really great because they encourage you to make very unique projects that you would take with you, even though you were sort of cookie cuttering them from a template. You didn't end up with the same project that everybody else who went to the boot camp had, which people can, as this is according to Leon, they could absolutely identify in an interview. Oh, you're another one of these people who went through X and Y project in boot camp. You have the exact same project as these other 10 people who applied, who obviously have that same boot camp. In fact, boot camps became so bad that people started recommending against putting boot camps in your resume because it could actually count against you. I'm not exaggerating. I am not exaggerating. There was a time, you can go to the research on this. It's actually pretty old at this point. And probably if you were search for around 2017, 2018, it was at that point the companies started officially saying to everyone publicly, we do not hire people from boot camps. We don't hire them at all. And that if you listed a boot camp, it could actually act against you. It was around that time that I ran into another guy who worked for the IT department for a local college, and so I I'm gonna get in trouble here. I kind of just started like, oh, really? And I mean, he was a nice guy, and we were hanging out and stuff, and it started to become clear that he didn't even have like rudimentary skills. And I used to say, well, what language did they teach us like that? And so this guy had been hired by a university, um, in part because of his boot camp he'd been through, but of his own admission, he didn't really know how to code at all, even though he goes, well, they sort of talked about this and such. I don't want to get too detailed because you'll find out who it is. And then he of his own admission, he had a job, so he wasn't stressed because they hired him anyway. Um, Probably because it was a university, who values a piece of paper more than they probably should. And so yeah, but in the conversation, became clear to me anyway that he was a great guy and he had a lot of desire to learn, but this boot camp that they had sent him to certainly did not do what was needed. And the last piece of this about the boot camp thing that I want to talk about is kind of comical. Okay, so I've been watching the boot camp movement and boot camp thing for quite a while, since at least 2013. And I've noticed there's a term in Silicon Valley called pivot, right? It's like if something's not working, it's like, oh, rather than admit failure, you do something called pivot. And a pivot is kind of a fancy way of saying, well, we're trying to be more successful than we already were without admitting that the thing you were just doing was an utter disaster. Did I say that out loud? I guess I did. Okay. Anyway, so in Silicon Valley, the term pivot. Oh yeah, we pivoted. We pivoted to this or pivoted to that. They say it all the time. Anyway, probably some of the biggest belly laughs in a Schadenfreude sense. Look it up. Came when all of these boot camps, which almost all of them, 9 out of 10 easily, were web based, right? They were, you can learn web development in 8 weeks and you can get a job for, crazy amount of money and you'll go work in Silicon Valley and your life will be awesome. And that did work for a couple people. And I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to say, hey, I don't know about you, but it worked for me. And that's fine. My argument there, by the way, is that you would have been successful either way. So with or without the bootcamp, I'm going to come back to that point when I conclude. But so these boot camps, the comical value of watching these boot camps try to pivot during the data science, which is a term that actual data scientists hate, most of them, machine learning people, well, specifically, right? And oh, you're in Davidson, nice. So we're making a video right now. Okay, so yeah, so we had so it was really fun to watch these boot camps try to pivot from web development to data science and tried to add in data science. And the thing is, this is kind of sad about that, is if you know anything about machine learning and data science, you don't just cram data science into an eight week video. No, it's not, Jalopy, but now it does because you made that comment. Don't make comments like that while I'm recording. Thank you. So the point of it is, I said at the beginning of the video, which you weren't here to see, that I was going to be wondering about, and the main point was at the beginning, but you missed that because you weren't here. Okay, so the point of this is that boot camps have primarily been developed for web stuff and not AI stuff, and having them try to become a data scientist boot camp has been rather entertaining because they absolutely suck at it, and they can't do it because they don't have the skills, and they're trying to bring people in who can actually teach machine learning and data science, and they're failing miserably about all of that. So the fun part, thank you for the follow. So the takeaway of that is that even when boot camps are successful or have been in the past, they've primarily been based on learning web skills. In fact, I know of no boot camp whatsoever that teaches you back-end development skills. They may do some, and almost all of them are not project based. There are some though, and I want to make sure you understand that. Like Learn with Leon's the one that he was doing, you do actually walk away with that with a couple projects that could help you to get the job and keep the job and be really good at it. So that's it. That's it. The video is simply, I know it's long. It's like walks around all over the place. But the takeaway is that beware of boot camps. Make sure that you get somebody else who's in the industry to look at the boot camp before you write a check. Promise me that one thing. If you made it to the end of the video, promise me that one thing. Okay. If you are considering a boot camp for any reason, run it by somebody who is gainfully employed doing the thing you want to do. And if you don't know what that thing is that you want to do, you should have done that already. There's other videos about that, right? Before you even start looking for places to learn, you need to know what you need to learn. And before you can do that, you need to know what you want to be. Go back and watch the videos about figuring that stuff out before you ever get to the decision about joining a boot camp. Boot camps are like exercise equipment. They appeal to people because they think if they sign up, they'll get healthy or they'll get a job. They don't ask the important questions. They don't make the internal commitments that are necessary up front. They haven't got the proper mind frame. And so what ends up happening is they're out the money. The equipment is gone. They end up selling it or moving it or donating it. And they still, but in the case of a boot camp, they also don't have the skills and they can't pay back the money. So just be really careful. That's a long-winded way to stay about that. So I'll end the video now. And then I'm going to go punch Jalopy. Bye.